Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, we welcome back Jamie McIntyre, who's the founder of A&R. He's behind the Free Speech Summit, and we're going to be talking about everything that happened there with the globalist attempts to cancel that. And it's kind of fitting, Jamie, after our last video where we spoke about how the globalists overtook Australia and how we can fight back and everything, which was a popular episode, that this all happened shortly after. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some of the best guests you had there and the messages. And we're going to talk about how the world seems to be really waking up to what's going on the past few weeks, which is really great to see. So welcome back, mate.
It's always a pleasure, Alex. Yeah, the Free Speech Summit was, surprising. I didn't think what happened would happen. For those who don't know, days out before the Free Speech Summit, we had a 2,000-seat theatre booked at the Star Casino on the Gold Coast. Many would know that venue. Beautiful theatre. We had 1,900 people booked in for the event. It was the first Free Speech Summit and Independent Media Awards to be held ever, to recognise the growth of a new industry, I guess, independent journalism, and to celebrate, I guess, Alex, the death of mainstream media and fake news. So it was kind of a combo of both of that. Speakers flying in from around the world to present at it, not for profit. Australian National Review, was the host broadcaster for the event. So days out, we started receiving, all the speakers, including myself, these emails from what were Israeli activists, suggesting that they support free speech, but we should all consider withdrawing from speaking at the Free Speech Summit because some of the speakers held views that they claim were anti-Semitic, et cetera, et cetera. And this wasn't just one email. We end up getting 20, 30 emails sent continuously. Shortly after that, Star, out of the blue, because the Star Theatre cancelled the event 2 days out, leaving us as the organisers in a lurch. And we basically had to tell the 1,900 people we're not going to be able to accommodate them. But luckily, at the last moment, because we couldn't go to another big venue, Alex, because they'd do the same thing and cancel it. So luckily we were able to get a smaller venue, which we could still broadcast because the focus was obviously a global live stream broadcast, which ended up going out to millions of views. But what was also interesting, so that were Israeli activists, but if it's just Israeli activists or lobbyists that were trying to stop the Free Speech Summit, then why is no other nation trying to stop it? Why was Israel the only nation objecting to a Free Speech Summit to be held on the other side of the world in Australia? That's concerning. But not only that, Alex, you can't just say it was activists for Israel or lobbyists, because they also had 2 of the American speakers out of 3 American speakers coming banned from entering the country. Lily Gaddis, who is the Australian National Review US correspondent and is outspoken political commentator in the US, she was banned like literally hours before her flight. So she had a visa granted that was revoked. Now, the reason, Alex, they revoked her visa, they said, one, because she became famous a year ago for simply on a TikTok video in a kitchen, she referred to some of her white friends using the N-word. And she's a white female, and if you're American white female and you actually mention the N-word, which is sung every day in black rap songs, and she referred to it referring to her white friends, not to black people. So she was like, they tried to cancel her. She lost her job over it, and she was on Candace Owens, Piers Morgan, and all those shows, and every headline around the world over that, which was nonsense, all right? They used that as a reason, plus that she was had spoken out against the bombing of innocent children in the Middle East, which any decent human would speak out against. They also banned Elijah Schaffer, who is for Rift TV, an independent journalist, used to work with Gateway Pundit. Now, he's married to an Australian and has a more permanent visa to Australia, and they banned him last minute from coming as well. So because also on the grounds that he's outspoken against bombing innocent children in the Middle East. So it's not just Israeli activists that tried to derail the Free Speech Summit. That's clearly high-level lobbyists, or the Israeli government has the power to dictate to the Australian government the immigration policy of Australia, who can come into Australia and who can't, and simply banning them because they're critical of a nation that drops bombs on innocent civilians, including children. We don't have to mention what nation that is. I'm sure your viewers can figure it out. But the only other American speaker Alex, they let into the country for the event was Steve Kirsch. Some of you know Steve Kirsch. He's a former tech multi-millionaire entrepreneur that become an anti-vaccine advocate. He was critical, of course, of the COVID vaccines and was, is a great speaker, and that's why we wanted him there. But he had never been critical online of the state that bombs, innocent children in the Middle East. So clearly now you can speak out against vaccines and be let into Australia, not like when they booted Novak Djokovic and deported him to Australian Open, remember, for simply refusing to take a deadly injection, and he was proven to be right. And by the way, he actually won the most outspoken athlete of the year award at the Independent Media Awards, was Novak Djokovic. Yeah. So that's clear that the Israeli government has power and the control of the Australian government to dictate our immigration policies, which leads into, Alex, people going, why do we have 1.7 million immigrants flooding Australia the last 2 years? I would suggest that same nation has control of our immigration policies and is responsible for that. What it does highlight, though, is one, I think it was a home goal by Israel. No other nation on the planet has any issue with the Free Speech Summit. Why are they the only nation, and why do they have the power in Australia to dictate to you and I who we can and can't listen to, and simply ban people coming to speak at a Free Speech Summit that posted some things on social media that are critical of something every human being should be critical of?
Well, literally, our Prime Minister's just flip-flop on this in the past couple of days, coming out and being critical of this exact issue. So they've just, they're stopping people from coming into the country, and this is their justification. And yet the world is waking up to what these people are really doing, their true history, and all these other crimes that they've probably been behind for decades, if not hundreds of years now. So it is really, I feel like we're kind of winning, and it's coming from the grassroots and independents and whatever. But some of these top podcasts in the world are now covering revisionist history.
Yeah, that's true. Like Tucker Carlson won the award for one of the top independent media journalists, and I think he's done a great job. Candace Owens, Joe Rogan for the best podcast. So a lot of the big names, Whitney Webb, but a lot of smaller names, Steve Kirsch for speaking out, Professor Ian Brighthope, and Adrian McRae, such a whole host of just Australians and global independent media journalists, because there needs to be recognition for this industry, because most journalists don't get paid. But it's true that they're coming out, even Joe Rogan. But you notice, I just wanted to add there, Alex, they claimed, the Israeli lobbyists, that this was going to be an anti-Semitic event, because some of the speakers like Max Egan, Ken Jeffries, who are on the documentary Occupied by Stu Peters, that documentary actually won the independent media documentary of the award by Stu Peters. So it doesn't matter. And Stu was meant to come to the event, but didn't, because he knew his visa was about to be revoked as well. Now, Stu is pretty outspoken, but if we're going to, and as I had to say to some people, they didn't want different speakers speaking, I'm going like, are we a free speech summit or not? Free speech can be brutal. The truth can be ugly. And Australian National Review, we've always had that organizing principle that, we must speak the truth regardless if it hurts our ratings, if it gets us censored. What are we? We are there to speak the truth. Fake news media deliberately lies to everyone every day. We may make some mistakes at independent media, but if we do, we have an army of citizen journalists that can highlight the facts, and we can correct anything. So we might inadvertently make an error. But mainstream media is deliberately deceiving and misleading people, as you know, about the COVID vaccines, as you know, even about Gaza. But more and more people are speaking out about that, which I think is good. But where they had difficulties with me, Alex, is that they claim I'm anti-Semitic. But I said, look, if this is not a Zionist event. If we were I've been to one of those events when I went to CPAC 6 months ago in Washington to report for Australian National Review. Myself and Lily Gaddis reported there live. That's when they said that this event, the Free Speech Summit, should be shut down because it's going to incite hatred and violence. That was their excuse, right? Well, I said, well, none of our speakers are going to incite hatred and violence. We just wouldn't tolerate that. But I did see at CPAC in Washington, the speaker, Levine, I think is it Max Levine or whatever, the Jewish commentator, has a political host show. He was on stage, and I was shocked by this. He was on stage at CPAC stating very clearly that Palestinians are animals. Actually, they're worse than animals. They're subhuman. They need to be eradicated. They are subhuman, and it's offensive to animals to even classify them as animals. Now, I don't know you about that, Alex, but I'm pretty sure that probably would be considered hate speech and inciting violence against an entire race. We would not have a speaker like that at such a free speech summit because we think it's outrageous to incite violence. Any of our speakers were critical, any decent human being, of actual violence of dropping bombs. Is there anything more violent than dropping bombs on innocent children, starving them to death, shooting them in the head not once, not twice? I just saw a video by RT News last night. A bullet lodged in the back of the head of a young child, a Gazan child. She's so lucky it didn't kill her. A drone shot a bullet in the back of her head. You can see the bullet. You know, she survived miraculously, but 18 other thousand children or counting haven't. 377,000 dead or missing people in Gaza. Now, let's guess if they're missing most likely underneath the rubble.
Yeah.
Which knows that the death toll of 50, 60,000 is going to end up being, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So where they struggle with me is that I said, look, you can call me anti-Semitic if you want for criticizing this nation dropping bombs on innocent people, but I'm not. It's not a Jewish thing. Half my friends are Jewish. 3 of my friends are Jewish billionaires in Australia. I've hosted them or been hosted by them. Many of them agree with my politics, but of course they can't speak out. And not one of them advocates for the eradication of an entire race of people and dropping bombs on them. Not one of them. And if they did, I wouldn't be their friend. But I can say 50% of my friends are Jewish. So the problem they have with me is that I'm not anti-Jewish. I'm actually have no issues with the most Jewish people I've met. I'm certainly anti any extremist ideology that suggests one race is superior to the other and that one race can eradicate another and think they're above the law. That's what I'm against. And I think, as you know, Alex, any decent human would be opposing what Netanyahu is doing and that regime and what they have done throughout history.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all that, Jamie. And that is their Achilles heel. And that's why it's really good to see. I only listened to a podcast yesterday with, you know, a famous Jewish comedian just speaking out about this so much, saying this isn't the views of all Jewish people and this shield of anti-Semitism they hide behind. Even all the Israeli people, there's so many people that are fleeing Israel now. And even within their own parliament, this is the most radical Zionist, you know, government that is behind Netanyahu now. So the world is waking up, even though they're trying to suppress it through the algorithms on TikTok and Facebook and whatever and remove those. But it's just everywhere that these videos are now where people can see these atrocities. So that's a real step in the right direction. And I agree with the free speech. It's the same with our philosophy on who we want to have on the channel. We don't have to agree with everything that everyone says, but when you wake up and realize that everything is a lie in our reality that's managed through the mainstream, then you have to start opening questions and be open-minded to everything. And that's what's happening at the moment with this decentralized army of independent people that are trying to find the truth and wake everyone up. And it's just amazing to see. So who were some of the best guests, mate? And give us a summary of sort of the things that they spoke about that impressed you.
Well, we also had Senator Renick speak on the night of, you know, the middle night was the Independent Media Awards. So he gave a speech on Free Speech Summit. And Senator Renick is someone I've had on my show on the McIntyre Report many times. I mean, and he's someone that we endorse at Australian National Review that would make a great prime minister. We are looking for a nationalist leader. My speech was about the concept that if you get caught into this left and right, in Western nations, we think we have a democracy. They fooled the left to stand with Ukraine. They fooled the right to supposedly have to stand with Israel. And I said, if you buy into either of those manipulations, you're being manipulated. You should never have stood with Ukraine. We called out that in the beginning that Russia was in the right. Russia did not start a 11-year-old war 3 years ago because, one, it's mathematically impossible, and the West started that, and the West continue that, and Russia was in the right. And I said, you shouldn't stand with Israel attacking Iran, or you shouldn't stand with Israel over October 7th because you'll find out it's a false flag, and Israel had a lot to do with it, which is now anyone that bothered to do the research knows it's kind of strange how the IDF was sent to the West Bank away from the border. It's kind of strange how the sensors and cameras were turned off. It's kind of strange how a nation that's so big on self-defense couldn't defend themselves against, with one of the largest military backing of the world, couldn't defend themselves against what? A battalion of dirt bikes and Air Force, of paragliders. I mean, it's just absurd. And we know the 1,100 Israelis killed that day. The evidence is clear that majority were killed by Israel. And the only babies that died that day were inside Israeli homes, and that were killed by tanks blowing up those homes. So, Alex, the obvious question is, how many army tanks does Hamas possess? How many fighter jets do they possess? How many missiles do they possess? 000. How many aircraft carriers on loan from the United States of America do they possess? 000. So it's not even a war, because to have a war, it has to be an opposing army. So this is just the absolute nonsense. So we highlighted, what does September 11th, October 7th, Bali bombings all have in common? I'm not going to say what it is, but in independent media, our research has shown it has one common denominator. So when people realize that everything they've been told at school and history, as you know, Alex, is pretty much a lie, they can start looking in the opposite direction. If they're too busy to be an independent or citizen journalist, busy paying their mortgages to the globalist bankers. But the Western, so I've highlighted to people, is that both the left faction, so when people thought they were going to get a political revolution with Donald Trump, and we highlighted and told people 6 months ago, I mean, I was disappointed when I was there at CPAC in Washington, saw firsthand that the MAGA movement has been hijacked. The Trump administration is a Zionist administration. Every single member of them is that. The Israeli handlers are there massaging the message, say America first, say America first. Keep saying that to appease MAGA. Now, MAGA were being tricked. And I really was disillusioned, because I too hoped for a political revolution that would boot out the globalist left. And then I also saw there further evidence that Q was nothing other than a psyops. We talked about the white hats, seems to be a psyop copying the white army that the Rothschilds used in the Bolshevik Revolution to pacify the uprising resistance in Russia. They said, the white army is coming to save you. The white hats is coming to save you. Trust the plan.
Yeah.
And what happened? That plan led to 30 to 60 million white Russian Christians predominantly being slaughtered and genocided, because the Rothschilds seem to show up wherever there's a genocide, coincidentally. I'm not saying they're genocidal, psychopathic, satanic Luciferians. No way would I ever suggest that. I'm just saying there's certain coincidences throughout history where they just seem to be around that sort of thing. So the white hats is probably most likely a right faction Zionist psyops. Not only that, I saw General Flynn there. I was going to remember General Michael Flynn. Many people thought he might have been part of Q or military intel on the good guys. And, these are Q, they're coming to save us. Well, I mean, General Flynn might be a nice guy, but he tweeted during the CPAC event at Washington while I was there that, I stand with Israel, and we must get Americans like Trump to stand with Israel. And even Trump to this day, last night, was reported by RT News, has told his sponsors, his donors, Jewish or particularly Israel, that the MAGA movement is hating Israel and it's destroying the MAGA movement. He has concerns about that, which legitimately you would have to have concerns about that, because the MAGA, I witnessed right there in that room at CPAC in Washington when Donald Trump spoke as the last speaker, Alex. There was an uproar. The crowd in the back corner of the room was shouting and was going to MAGA was about to split then. If Donald Trump didn't turn and appease the J6s, because they kicked out the J6s from that event. I interviewed some of them live. Some of these people just got out of jail because they were wrongfully jailed over J6, January 6th event, which the Democrats set up. And then they were booted out of this event. Now, this is meant to be a conservative political action group. We're conservative, the right side of politics, where we should belong. We should feel welcome. They booted them out, and I predicted then MAGA is going to split. 6 months later, exactly what we warned our readers, even though it was unpopular, that Trump, unfortunately, administration is controlled by the Zionist regime, every single one of them. There was no Tucker Carlson, no Joe Rogan, no Candace Owens invited to speak at CPAC. You know why? Because they were starting to be a little bit too critical of a certain nation. And that's the challenge. So we have both left. So the right faction was behind Q. They leaked. People go, why would Q leak all this damaging information on the globalist elite if they were the bad guys? Well, they weren't necessarily the bad guys. They were throwing the globalist left faction under the bus to expose them because there's two factions competing for a one world government, both Zionist factions, the globalist left, the Soros, all that nonsense and co, which we all agreed with. Let's get rid of them, the woke nutters, and support the alternative. But we didn't realize the alternative under Trump was being hijacked and controlled by the right. So I'm highlighting right now, Alex, what I did at the Free Speech Summit. If both the left and right is controlled, democracy means the Rothschilds control your country's central banking system. And that's all you have is you can choose between the left side of Israel to run your country or the right side. Who did Peter Dutton beg to mostly in the last federal election? It was the state of Israel. That's who he begged to be anointed as the prime minister. Who did Pauline Hanson drape? What flag did she drape in the Australian Parliament 18 months ago? It wasn't the Australian flag, was it? We all know what flag she draped herself in. And from that day on, she destroyed her party, still doesn't realize it. Yeah. And it's not that she's not a good person, she's just misled. So the left and right is the problem. So I'm trying to get people to understand, support the only faction capable of creating influence in the world, Alex. And we mentioned that before we come on air, is the BRICS, a multipolar world. They want trade, not war. They want peace and national sovereignty. And to do that, we must support a national leader that comes to power. All nations have a strong national leader. In the West, Alex, can we name one strong nationalist leader that is making their nation first? Not even Trump can be considered that anymore, because it's not make America first. It's make Israel first. All the puppets have to make Israel first. Even in Australia, the left, Albanese, they hate the right faction, Netanyahu, but they still are towed into line and have to. But even though gladly they're starting to speak out, Bob Casp is speaking out, someone I used to never look up to in politics, the former New South Wales Premier. Kevin Rudd has spoke out for some time. So I agree with what you said, but I want people to realize there is a solution and we are actually winning. We are winning because BRICS is winning. Trump last night put the tariffs on India. It backfired. He's trying to bully the BRICS that if you join BRICS, we're going to tariff you. Look, the reality is this. It's a yapping dog. It's like the British Empire. Yap, yap, yap. They're going to attack Russia, or they're going to, Russia's a threat and Russia's this and that. It's like a little chihuahua. Like Russia could wipe the floor of the falling British Empire in 2 weeks. Yeah. America's headed that way. America is no longer the military dominance and no longer the economic powerhouse. Russia, China, Iran are winning, and that is good news for us. And people should rejoice and thank God that we won't end up with a one world government. We will end up with a multipolar world thanks to the BRICS, which is what Australia should join.
Yeah, you've touched on some great points there, Jamie. So I think one thing that's interesting, and I followed all the Q stuff closely, and I guess my message to our audience is always watch what they do, not what they say. And even the fact that Elon was cozying up so close and clearly trying to roll out AI, microchips, a global internet, a global, digital car system kind of thing. It's all this technocracy. So I was cautious there. But for me, the thing that seems strange is for RFK to run on openly talking about the vaccine and Trump to run on openly, I'm going to release the Epstein list. And as you say, now that it's not happening, he stabbed all his supporter base in the back. And that's actually, I think, causing more of an awakening. So I just find it all fascinating because there's clearly more and more people waking up, and this is becoming more and more obvious who's running the show. And so when you say someone like Pauline Hanson maybe is ill-informed or whatever, I'm kind of wondering, well, are some of these politicians ill-informed? Because unless you go down rabbit holes, you only know what you only know kind of thing. And you might know there's corruption here and there or whatever, but you don't know the full extent of it. So that's where I think we're in the most interesting times ever as we watch, well, who is actually going to speak up and tell the truth? It's going to become very clear who's behind all this if it keeps coming out through all these podcasts and then it filters its way through TikTok and conversations and so on. And people are looking around every day, whether it's at the skies or we've now got these floods or whatever it is, and going, something weird is going on. It's something doesn't feel right. What is it? So, yeah, what are your thoughts on where we go from here? Because as you say, if the Q stuff isn't true, which is so much of that supporter base is now waking up to, where do you think we go from here? Do they turn against Trump? Do they install JD Vance? Is Trump just another fall guy?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And I think people need to be optimistic because that's what I'm saying. The message is we are actually winning. And what I said at Free Speech Summit, we basically have three choices. You can support the globalist left nutters and, all that, but most of the world rejected that, the Biden administration, the control of the Democrats, etc., the puppets on the left, the Rothschilds obviously behind that. But then they divide us with the right faction, Netanyahu and etc. Now, a lot of the right faction, we would agree with more of their policies, but still we don't have to support either of them. Both factions want a one world government run either out of Jerusalem or out of Ukraine. Ukraine would be Israel too, but they're failing it because that's where as you know, the Rothschilds are from, the Khazarian mafia. I think if people understand that Israel is a fraudulent name, it's not Israel. It's a banking cartel state, a fake state created in 1948 by a banking cartel family that is godless, doesn't believe in God, just prints fake money, was the control of the British Empire in World War I, World War II, was behind those wars because they profit from wars. All wars, as you know, are banker wars. And that they fraudulently ripped off the name Israel to fool American Christians predominantly because they needed to rape and pillage the American taxpayer to fund their planned wars after they'd already sucked the British Empire dry. Now look at the sad, shell, what's left of that. And then now they're flooding UK and Ireland and Western Europe with mass immigration, which was part of the clergy plan to destroy Western civilization, which was predominantly built by white Christians. So if people understand so they fooled many of us to think, they are God's chosen ones and Israel is biblical. Well, it's a fake state created by a bunch of banker wankers that bought up the media and your governments and tell you they're God's chosen ones. Why the hell would God have anything to do with a bunch of money changers of banker wankers that are satanic Luciferians that actually hate Christians as much as they hate Muslims? I mean, it's absurd when we understand that, but a lot of us were like, I just don't understand. Who should I support? And they believed the lies of October 7th. The babies were beheaded and put in ovens and hummus is evil. Any hummus that is evil would most likely be Mossad agents committing atrocities under the brand of hummus. Yeah. So people had to understand that, just like I dare say, if we go back to World War II and the Nazis word was created by the Rothschilds as a slur, right? And infiltration of that movement to create atrocities to then frame and divide and to blame, Hitler, and then lie to us about things there. So people certainly are waking up. So the solution is, where do we go from here? We need a political revolution in the West. We thought we were going to get it with Trump. We'll get some good things out of Trump, hopefully. But unless he tells, Israel to go shove it and make America first, which we really want to happen, and does he have the power to do that? Trump doesn't know everything. Paul and Hansen doesn't know everything. I mean, we got to stop expecting these people to know everything. They simply don't. I posted and went to several million views on Twitter, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Elon Musk was smart. I mean, a lot of people don't trust Elon, but I think Elon reads the room way better than Trump. He's way smarter than Trump, way richer than Trump. And I know he has his tech agendas, but I think Peter Thiel and them have more of those agendas than Elon. I think Elon personally has the right agenda, but he still has the guide rails of what he can and can't do. But he did speak out against the ADL in the early days, and they're going to destroy Twitter. And they kind of, Netanyahu grabbed him and took him to Auschwitz and put him back into the programming again. But I still hold out that he's not going to be controlled as much as they like. Trump is easily controlled. Unfortunately, Trump is very predictable. He thinks he's not. But he's incredibly predictable, easily to manipulate, and they just play him like a fool. A lot of people don't like me saying that, but Trump probably has good intentions, but he's a Zionist. Now, that's not me saying that. You can ask him, and he'll tell you. You know what I'm saying? So people are like, oh, no, he's not a Zionist. It's like he tells you he's a Zionist all the time. He kisses the wall, and he's deeply concerned. He wants Americans to love Israel more and doesn't understand why they don't. And his son-in-law, as you know, Jared, is deeply embellished in the, the Israeli movement. So the solutions are simple. We want a true democracy, and we need to support the BRIC nations. The BRICS are the future. America could become a nationalist leader, but make America first and join the BRICS, dump Israel, and the problems of the world are over. Australia should join the BRICS regardless. We benefit from China. Our future with China and India. We should have good relations with Russia as well. So if I was Prime Minister of Australia, the first thing I'd do is join BRICS. The second thing I'd do is ban the Rothschilds' income tax, gone, write off all the debt, take back, nationalize most of our industries, kick out the globalists or make them pay fines for not paying tax and take back some of the shareholding, make Australians the owners, income tax is gone. The dividends of the wealth of our nation go to the people, and we're not left just hoping for a job in an overly expensive nation, overtaxed and overregulated nation controlled by a bunch of banker wankers that love dropping bombs on people. So the solutions to Australia and the West are quite simple. We need a political revolution, and you're not going to get that while you support the left and right. You're not going to get that if you support even One Nation now. Now, One Nation, a coalition of these parties, could be brought together under proper leadership. But how many of the libertarians and Craig Kellys and Pauline Hansons have been bought out for chump change, or they're simply like, Craig probably hasn't figured out Israel's the problem, or not game to speak out. So as more people wake up, they'll realize once we can clearly identify who the enemy is, that's why you already have anti-Semitism laws. That's why this fake state did a fake caravan plot in Australia, which we said straight away, that's a false flag to push in. Let me wait for it. I bet you they pushed through anti-Semitism laws, which are censorship laws, and guess what they did? And when people wake up in America and realize Israel did September 11th, how is Israel going to be considered? Americans will want to go to war against Israel. And if you piss off America enough and Americans get control of America, I would hate to be Israel. And we warned last year, we don't want civilian deaths on either side. We warned Israelis in Israel less than a year ago, flee, get the hell out of Israel. The writing's on the wall, what's going to happen. And it's up to people to listen. So I'm telling you now, Australia, when you're ready for political revolution, and how I know when you're ready is when you stop believing fake news mainstream media and the character assassinations of your real leaders, what they want to attack and have you not believe or listen in, and you support the fake imposter leaders or the puppets. When you're ready to stop supporting both the left and right and think your team is better than the other and start supporting real independence, someone like a Senator Renick, there's a whole team there. I like Malcolm Roberts as well, but he has to toe the line with One Nation. One Nation could be saved if they just realize stop supporting Israel for chump change, libertarians. Yeah. So there is that potential there. I'm not saying it's easy. It's going to take time. But the fact that Russia's winning, we told people they would win, they won't lose. And that's a good Christian white nation that Australia should be aligned with. Why should we hate on Russia or hate on Putin? It's just simple propaganda of the satanic West, why we hate those nations. We should have a better relationship with China. We should show respect to our largest trading partner. Stop buying into this fear that China's going to invade us one day. If China wanted to invade us, they can. And 2% of their Navy fleet could take us over. So stop this nonsense. China's happy to buy our resources. And there's only one thing worse than China buying our resources is China not buying our resources. Yeah. So the point being is this, it's a mafia tactic. Israel wants Australia to think that we need, China's going to invade you, so we cling to the dying US military empire, or Indonesia's a threat. I live in Indonesia, and the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is attacking the Indonesian president. Simply what? Because they joined the BRICS, simply because they oppose the bombing of innocent children in Gaza, simply because they have a strong relationship with Russia. Now, Russia is moving some of their military assets to Indonesia. I support that. I'm an Australian, and Australia is occupied, and I think in the future, we could be saved by joining the BRICS if we support a nationalist leader. And you're not going to get those smart leaders to show up unless the Australian population is ready for them.
Another interesting thing with touching on all that is Tulsi Gabbard's just come out, I think in the past 24 hours, and said Operation Mockingbird never ceased in America. And again, for those people that don't know, that's the infiltration of the media. And a lot of that was done by ex-Nazi scientists that were, came into America to start things like NASA and the CIA. But this was one of their projects where they'd been working on mind control techniques and whatever, and they've infiltrated the media. So for her to come out and announce that publicly, it gets people looking into, what is Operation Mockingbird? And we need to wake people up from the brainwashing. And as you say, if you're falling for left and right, you're falling for all these different agendas that people, you can say that I'm pro this or anti that, and family members stop talking to each other these days. It's ridiculous how, they've divided everyone, where the only way we win this is uniting as humans and the good guys versus the bad, evil guys, ultimately.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where I've said to this, the only way that, many of us I would consider myself centre-right. I'm centre-left on some policies, but predominantly centre-right. That means if you're centre-right, you'd be considered far-right, by the extreme left. They don't get that they're extreme left and, normal people are in the centre or centre-right. But I think they divide to conquer. And I think the only issue, Alex, that will unite the world, what's the only issue we really agree with some of the left on? Is the bombing of innocent children is wrong.
I was going to say it's the kids, protecting the kids,
Yeah, that is the one issue that left and right can really unite on. Stop bombing Gaza. Stop starving them. Stop trying to steal their land. Stop trying, because people have got to understand. They're like, Israel has a right to defend itself. Okay, well, let's test that theory, shall we? Are many dumbed down Westerners that buy into that bullshit? Okay, let's test it. Okay, so Israel starts dropping bombs on your suburb, your street, and your relatives get blown to pieces, and the only piece you'll get is picking up body pieces of your children or your nieces and nephews and sisters, and etc. Are you going to still stand there and say, Israel still has a right to defend themselves? No, you're a liar, you're a hypocrite, and you're full of shit. So speak the truth and stop lying. You don't stand with Israel. If you stand with Israel, go and join the military and start shooting kids in the head if that's what you want to do. You don't stand with Israel. You're just bullshit. You're incongruent. So speak the truth. And that's what I say to people. We have to shock them out of this BS. You're going to stand with Israel because you get cheap interest and you might get some business deals and a promotion. I mean, that is pathetic. If you don't know what's right and wrong, and if you're a Christian like Charlie Kirk, I've called out many times, and even he has to now wake up, not because of me, but because of his supporters are anti-Israel. So he now has to come and talk about it. Otherwise, even though he's paid by Israel, he's an Israel shill. Ben Shapiro's an agent. So, of course, they're all this, but, they're not independent journalists. Why do you think Avi Yemeni wasn't invited to and wasn't nominated for any independent media awards? Because he's not independent. He might have done a great job exposing COVID, and we respected him for that, but he's an Israeli shill. He's a Zionist. So if you're a Zionist, that's fine. At least admit it as he does. But you've got to accept that, one, I think anyone that's at, and we're going to push for consumer activism and legal funds to sue people, that Zionism is terrorism. Zionism is extremism. It's a dangerous ideology, and those people should be fired from their jobs, and then we should put pressure on employers to fire people that have a dangerous terrorist ideology or superior ideology from our society. They should be banished from politics. They should be banished from the finance and banking sector, pharmaceutical sector, and every sector. Sorry, are we going to allow a radical Islamist to have high positions in any industry? No. And most radical Islamists are funded by, we know, Israel as well anyhow, to create that divide. People have a go at Muslims. I'm like, I live in the biggest Muslim nation on the planet, in Indonesia, the fourth largest population on the planet, will soon, by 2050, become the fourth biggest economy on the planet, like a third world country that has a massive future because they booted out Israel 25 years ago because they controlled the Suharto regime, which was genociding Indonesians. Notice genocide, Rothschilds, it just seems to show up. So this country is not perfect, Indonesia, but I defend Muslims because they're not radical Islamists. They're not into Sharia law. They're not into anything other than traditional values, family values, and wanting the best for their nation. And I feel safer in Indonesia than I do in the West. That's the reality.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. Getting back to the Free Speech Summit, any of the best talks you want to share some summaries of, or anything that you found interesting?
I think Steve Kirsch was amazing. He's a great speaker. He's done a lot of hard work, those who follow Steve Kirsch. You can watch the Free Speech Summit. It's still playing, I believe, on ANR.news on our 24-hour news headline. If you go to ANR.news, I think it's still there playing, so you can watch it. And then obviously new shows being added to it since then. For we have about 5 or 6 political hosts now. So Australian National Review is rolling out to be a global, independent media broadcaster. We have UK, US correspondents, multiple Australians, etc. Syrian girls just started. Some of you follow her to do a show for us. So we're looking at more and more independent journalists to do shows, so we can kind of have a larger platform for everyone to share their content, because it's part of this great awakening. So we actually have real independent media. I know Sky News in Australia like to claim they're independent media, but some might say Sky Jews or Fox Jews. They are funded by that, so they're not independent media. You can't criticize a certain nation. We'll criticize if Russia was in the wrong and Putin was doing wrong, we wouldn't hesitate to call him out, right? Because we are independent. We're not funded by anyone other than our small donors and people like myself that really believe in the future of the humanity and the country and put our money where our mouth is. So Steve Kirsch was great. I think Adrian McRae is a great man, great speaker. I think he donated made tribute for his award to David McBride, who I think is one of the Australian former soldiers who's locked away over things that he didn't do. Bring awareness to things that often many people simply aren't aware. So I think people like Max Egan were controversial, but many people follow what Max talked about. He was on Occupy, Ken Jeffries, etc. It's not a matter whether people like it. We can't say we only like free speech that we support. It's like, and I admit, and it's not easy advocating for free speech because there's some things we don't agree with. But we have to go, well, there was one speaker there, she's Ukrainian, and we still have the speaker thread, all the speakers that spoke at the event. And she's trying to push Western propaganda. She's completely pro-Ukrainian propaganda. And I'm like, and she's getting educated by other speakers. It's because she's simply, we're not going to tolerate that. Independent media is not there to push Western propaganda. It's there to push the truth.
Yes.
And to investigate the truth. And you can't claim to be an independent media journalist if you're buying into bullshit propaganda, particularly by the West, which lies 99% of the time. So about the Ukrainian-Russian issue, when we highlighted some simple facts about that. So if the British Empire or the UK was dropping bombs on innocent children and civilians, we would call them out for it, and we wouldn't accept and tolerate being called anti-British because we're criticizing them. So I think people need to really tell these people to go shove it. We're sick of their bullshit. We're sick of their PR spin. I've taken on Aaron Nolan on Twitter multiple times. Aaron Nolan was a former rugby league commentator, never played rugby league in her life, so I don't know how you commentate on rugby league when you never played it before, but good luck to her. But now she's an Israeli shill and lying and trying to trick and deceive as an influencer the Australian public, that they should feel sorry and stand with Israel because it's Hamas that's blocking the aid getting to Gaza. It's Hamas's fault why the people are being bombed to death and starving because they won't release these hostages. I mean, it's anyone that buys that BS, and complete and utter BS, is that we know it's Israel blocking the aid. Israel's dropping the bombs, and Israel coordinate October 7th. So, but these people are paid influencers that need to pay their mortgage and will push any evil agenda, and they need to be called out for it. So I call out Aaron Nolan and any other influencers like that. Be a decent human. I know you need to pay your bills, but if you're taking money to lie to the Australian public, I don't think that reflects very well on you as a human being. And I think people need to call people out more. I won't hesitate. I didn't during COVID, and I'll call out more people. And I ask all people, we all can do more, Alex. We can be more activists. We can be more. How about we start demanding that people lose their job if they have extremist ideologies and support the bombing of innocent children? How about we demand they're sacked? How about we demand we don't spend money at businesses that support that? You as a consumer have the power, and you should use that power.
Well, just in wrapping up, Jamie, I think one thing I've noticed is that Aussies are, pretty laid back, and even with a lot of the vax stuff, I had it, there's nothing I can do now, or they, even if they read a bit about 9/11 or whatever, the JFK assassination, it comes out that Israel and Mossad is involved. It's got nothing to do with me, it doesn't affect my life kind of attitude. So one thing I'm finding interesting now is this all connects to, the child trafficking and the pedo network and this blackmail ring that's running the world. We're starting to see a lot of childcare workers and this kind of headlines in the news in Australia. So I kind of wonder if this is the thing that maybe, is going to get Aussies upset and off the couch if they realise just how prolific this global pedo network is in Australia as well as all around the world, and of directly affecting our kids. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, once again, it's becoming more common knowledge. Like, it was crazy, lunatic conspiracy theory, this stuff when it first come out. But it just takes time, and then people start to weather manipulation, geoengineering was chemtrails was outrageous. I mean, one of my friends, Dave Eggs, was pillared and criticized for a long time, but he was one of the early ones to really speak out about that. And now he's been proven to, when they're even in Florida, state of Florida, is trying to ban a lot of these things in other states. So The pedophile networks are very concerning. It's very concerning how infiltrated it is in Australia in particular. I think the issue after this, I'm doing the McIntyre report and interviewing American about gun laws and Port Arthur massacre. I think Australians need to revisit that as well. Why our guns were removed off us, and was that a false flag? That should be heavily investigated and open up for a royal commission.
Well, just on that quickly, it's fascinating. I mentioned the Wasp Files last time you were on, but there's been about a dozen channels now that I've seen made pretty good videos on that, and something that would have been censored, I'm sure, on YouTube a few years ago seems to be allowed on there now. So all that is a positive sign for me. And some of these videos are getting 100,000 plus views. For me, the amount of Aussies showing that much interest in this thing, again, this is really positive. People are waking up.
Well, I think Alex, COVID did that. We look at the Iraq War now. Those who are around then, some of us knew at the time that Netanyahu was lying to Congress and they were lying to, Prime Minister John Howard. I think John Howard was sincere. I think if you ask John today, he deeply believed that they had weapons of mass destruction. I don't think he was lying to us. And this is where a lot of conspiracy theorists get it wrong. Even with Port Arthur massacre, they're like, John Howard knew about that, he's behind it. No, the front government, the facade of the government is like the mayor of a town, like your prime minister. They're not running the show. The deep state is part of controlling intelligence agencies predominantly and the media outlets. And then they operate, and then they control some of the people in the different administrations. If they're going to carry off, say, a false flag like they have, Mossad has done many times, let's say they did Port Arthur massacre. The main government and John Howard then certainly wouldn't know about it. They are just fed, intelligence services feed them, this is what happened to the local police. They tell them exactly what happened, and they tell the same script to the media, and that's the story that's run. And everyone believes it. So even the politicians simply believe it because their advisors say this is what happened. They don't question it. They don't question, is that intelligence officer or special services that was there or supplying this, are they actually telling the truth, or they're the corrupted few? So that's how they do it. Especially if you investigate the Train brothers being killed, and if you do ask questions about how come the local police commissioner in Dalby didn't know what happened, they say they were told. Well, who were they told by what happened? If the local police commissioner doesn't know what happens, who told him what happened for the story to run in the newspaper and the story to come out by the government?
Yeah, no, completely agree.
So when you investigate that, that's when you start to find out, to carry off an operation like this, very few people need to know. So the claim you'll have people go, can't be a conspiracy theory on anything because everyone would have to be in on it. No. For it to actually be carried away, very few people, like the moon landing, it had to happen because how could they get all these people to be in on it? No. The only way they hoaxed that, they could have done it was very few people knowing about it and people being fed the data and the information they believe to be true because they don't question that they might possibly be being deceived. And that's the problem with people. Donald Trump can be deceived easily. Do you think Israel's not playing him like a fool? Now, it's not that Donald's not a little bit open, figuring some of that out and may not like Netanyahu. But because he's got an ego, because he's predictable, they can manipulate the hell out of him like they manipulate everyone. And they can badger him, put him in a corner and make him a useful idiot. Yeah. And so Trump may end up being the person who wakes up the world, but only by being a useful idiot, not by being someone that, who knows? Either way, I think he's going to wake up a lot of people.
Fantastic. Well, that's probably a good spot to wrap up. As always, I'll put the links to follow all Jamie's work down below. But any final thoughts for people at home, mate? We'll probably have to do something pretty regularly if the world keeps getting crazy at this rate. We'll do a monthly show together or something.
Yeah, I think I would say to Australians and Westerners, your government lies to you and your mainstream media lies to you. They character assassinate anyone that's tried to change things. I've been character assassinating cancel culture since, coincidentally, after I launched Australian National Review in 2013, I was hosting Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time. He was my political mentor. I launched a political party. He wouldn't be now. I mean, he's a great guy. I launched a political party. I was then invited to Israel, and I went in 2014 on a delegation. Strange you get invited to a delegation. And I was asked to be a friend of Israel. I was also offered money in Australian National Review by that sort of money to invest in that. I said no. And I was heavily cancelled ever since. I'm not saying it has anything to do with them, but I was attacked by government agencies I was warning about the 2030 globalist agenda. Private ownership will be removed from Australians and in the West. And to shut me up, they removed my private ownership and took tens and tens of millions of dollars of my assets. And that's why I'm suing the Australian government next October for $250 million in losses. And we're going to take on this government. I don't live in Australia anymore because I'm an independent media journalist. I don't feel safe. And I've been harassed when I arrive at airports and interrogated, even some of my staff, etc., and things taken. We don't trust the Australian government, and people shouldn't either. You need to start trusting the people that put their time, money, and energy on the line. And you need to also get your money the hell out of Australia. If you leave all your money in Western banks, you're a fool. If you leave all your assets in Australia, you're a fool, and you're going to regret that. I told people to buy Bitcoin at 75 US in 2014. Those who listen to multi-millionaires, I told them to buy property 20 years ago in Australia. Those who listen to multi-millionaires. I've helped people make about $8 billion, my clients, in the last 25 years, not to impress anyone, to impress upon you. I've helped people by getting people to know the truth. The people that still continue to believe in the government and the mainstream media are going to be misled, take more vaccines, they'll die sooner, and they'll die poorer. So be careful who you listen to.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, that's our mission too, Jamie. So I love it. So well done, mate. Good luck with everything, and we'll have to catch up again in future. Cheers.
More than welcome.
Cheers, guys.
Take care.